The moment Isosa Bamadil stepped into Adewale Group's headquarters, she felt the weight of power pressing against her chest. The marble floors gleamed like they were made to reflect wealth. The air smelled of imported cologne and ruthless ambition. Every employee that passed her whispered the same warning: "Don't cross Mr. Kola Adewale." Kola was more than just a billionaire. He was a legend whispered about in boardrooms and magazines. A man who built an empire from dust, who smiled only when closing deals worth millions. Isosa had read about him before she ever met him, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. When he walked into the glass conference room, time seemed to pause. Tall, dark-skinned, with a sharp jawline and eyes that carried a storm, Kola moved like a man who owned every space he entered. His presence was intimidating, almost magnetic. Even his silence commanded attention. "Miss Bamadil," he said, his deep baritone cutting through the air, "your resume says you're efficient. Let's hope it's not exaggerated." She straightened her back, trying to steady her breathing. "I don't exaggerate, sir. I deliver." His eyes flicked up from the file in his hand, scanning her like a challenge. "We'll see." The meeting began, and so did the chaos. He fired off instructions faster than she could write them down. Every detail mattered to him. Every second lost was a personal offense. By noon, her nerves were on fire, but she refused to break. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, Isosa was still at her desk, editing a report he'd demanded be perfect by morning. When she heard the sound of footsteps approaching, her heart skipped. It was him. Kola leaned against her desk, the soft light from her lamp catching the lines of his suit. "You're still here. I wanted to make sure the proposal meets your standard," she replied without looking up. A faint smirk curved his lips. "You're not like the others. Most people run from me after the first day." Isosa finally looked up and for the first time saw something different in his eyes. Not just authority but exhaustion. Loneliness even. "I don't run from challenges," she said quietly. His gaze lingered a little too long before he straightened up. "Don't let that confidence turn into arrogance, Miss Bamadil. Ambition can destroy the unprepared." When he left, the air around her still felt charged. She exhaled slowly, not realizing her hands were trembling. But as she packed her things, her eyes caught a folder he'd dropped on her desk by mistake, labeled Malik. Single name. Nothing more. But it would change everything. The next morning, Isosa walked into the office before sunrise. The city outside was still half asleep, but her thoughts weren't. She couldn't stop thinking about that folder. Malik. The name echoed in her head like a whisper she wasn't supposed to hear. By 7 a.m., Kola Adewale was already in his glass office, phone pressed to his ear, voice sharp and low. "I said no one touches that property until I approve it myself. I don't care what the board says." His tone was pure authority, but his eyes, the few times she caught them through the glass, looked heavy, tired. When he ended the call, she knocked softly. "Sir, the revised proposal is ready. Leave it on the desk." His gaze didn't lift. She obeyed, but her eyes betrayed her curiosity. On the far side of the room, behind the massive oak desk, a small silver frame lay half-hidden under some documents. The corner of a photo peeked out, a child's smile frozen behind glass. Kola's voice snapped her back. "Do you make it a habit to stare at my personal things, Miss Bamadil?" Her breath hitched. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to." He stood, closing the distance between them with quiet precision. "Curiosity," he said slowly, "is dangerous in this company." For a moment, she thought he might fire her. But instead his gaze softened, just slightly. "You did good work yesterday. Better than most." It was the first compliment he'd given her. And the way his deep voice wrapped around the words made her pulse skip. "Thank you, sir." He nodded once, dismissing her. But when she turned to leave, her sleeve brushed against the frame, knocking it slightly off the table. Fell face up. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, smiled from within the glass. Same piercing eyes. Same skin tone. The resemblance was unmistakable. Kola froze. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since she met him, she saw real fear flicker across his face. He reached down, picked up the frame, and placed it back carefully. "Forget what you saw," he said, voice low. "That picture doesn't exist." Isosa swallowed hard. "Sir, who is he?" He looked at her, and his eyes darkened. "He's nobody." But the lie hung between them like smoke. She knew it. And from that moment, Isosa promised herself she would find out who Malik really was, even if it meant crossing the man everyone feared. The rain came without warning, thick, angry drops that beat against the glass walls of Adewale Group like 1,000 drummers. Everyone had gone home hours ago, but Isosa was still at her desk, fingers tapping furiously on her keyboard. She wanted the proposal ready before dawn. Maybe then, she thought, Kola would finally see her as more than just another employee. Thunder cracked overhead, the lights flickered, and the entire building dimmed into a soft glow. She sighed, massaging her temples. "Perfect," she muttered. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, firm, deliberate. Kola Adewale. He stood in the doorway of her office, shirt collar loosened, tie gone, sleeves rolled up, the stormlight reflecting against his skin. He looked nothing like the distant boss who commanded meetings. He looked human, exhausted, dangerous. "You're still here," he said, his voice low. "I was finishing the final edits for the client," she replied, keeping her eyes on the screen. "I didn't want you disappointed again." "Again?" he asked, stepping closer. "You think I'm that hard to please?" Isosa's lips parted slightly. "You have a reputation, sir." He chuckled softly, moving behind her chair. "Reputations are born from fear, not truth." She turned in her seat, and for the first time they were inches apart. The air between them crackled. Outside, lightning split the sky, white light flashing across his face. She saw it then, the loneliness buried deep behind his confidence. "Why do you work so hard, Isosa?" he asked quietly. "It's almost like you're running from something." Her breath caught. "Maybe I am. Maybe we both are." His eyes darkened, tracing the curve of her lips before he looked away. "You should go home before the rain gets worse." She stood, brushing past him toward the door. But when she reached for the handle, thunder roared, and the power went out completely. The room was plunged into darkness. "Kola!" she whispered before she realized she'd used his first name. He was closer than she thought. "You're not afraid of me, are you?" Her pulse raced. "Should I be?" He took a step forward, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath near her ear. "Everyone else is." Lightning flashed again, and this time she saw him clearly. His hand hovered near her face, his gaze searching her eyes, asking a question he didn't dare voice. For one suspended heartbeat, neither of them moved. And then he whispered, "Go home, Isosa," and walked away into the dark. But the tremor in her chest told her, something had just changed forever. 3 days had passed since that stormy night, yet Isosa could still feel the electricity of Kola's nearness in her veins. He'd barely spoken to her since then, just clipped instructions and brief nods, as if pretending nothing happened. But silence had its own language, and every glance he stole across the boardroom said what his lips refused to. That Friday, he summoned her to his office. "You'll accompany me to the estate outside Lekki," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "We're finalizing some documents. I need efficiency." "Yes, sir," she replied, though her pulse quickened. She knew better than to question him. The drive was long and quiet, the road framed by palm trees swaying in the humid breeze. When they arrived, Isosa was struck by how peaceful the place was. Lush gardens, white walls, and silence so pure it felt sacred. Not the kind of space for business. While Kola made a call, she wandered toward the garden. That's when she saw him. A boy, maybe 7 years old, chasing butterflies barefoot through the grass. He laughed, pure and bright, his curls bouncing in the sunlight. Something about him stopped her heart cold. Eyes. The same piercing gaze that had haunted her dreams since that photograph. He froze when he saw her, then grinned. "Hi, Auntie. You look lost." Isosa crouched slightly, her voice soft. "Maybe I am. What's your name?" "Malik," he said proudly. "What's yours?" Her lips parted, but before she could answer, a shadow fell over them. "Malik," Kola's voice cut through the air. Sharp, protective, almost panicked. The boy ran to him instantly, and Kola's hand rested on his shoulder, firm but trembling. "What did I tell you about talking to strangers?" he scolded gently. "She's not a stranger," Malik protested. "She's nice." Isosa stood, heart thudding. "Mr. Adewale, this is..." "Enough," he interrupted, his tone low and final. "Go back inside, Malik." The boy obeyed, glancing back at her with innocent curiosity. When he was gone, Kola turned to Isosa. His expression was a storm barely held in check. "You weren't supposed to meet him." Her voice trembled. "He's your son." Kola's jaw tightened, eyes darkening. "You will not speak of this to anyone." She swallowed hard. "Why hide him, Kola?" His gaze softened for the first time. "Because the world already took one family from me. I won't let it happen again." As he walked away, Isosa stood frozen among the roses, realizing she had just stepped into the most dangerous part of his life. His heart. Isosa couldn't sleep that night. The drive back from the estate replayed in her mind over and over. The way Malik had smiled up at her like they'd known each other forever, and the haunted look in Kola's eyes when she'd said the words, "He's your son." By morning, the office was alive with gossip about some press leak from a rival company, but Isosa's focus stayed locked on Kola. He'd shut himself in his office all day, blinds drawn, taking no calls. Something about his silence terrified her more than his temper ever could. Finally, late in the evening, she gathered her courage and knocked. "Come in," his voice rasped from inside. The lights were dim. Kola sat behind his desk, tie loosened, staring at the same photograph she'd once seen. Malik's picture, now cracked at the edge of the frame. He looked up, eyes bloodshot, voice heavy. "You should have stayed away from the garden." "I didn't plan to meet him," she said softly. "But I'm glad I did. He's a good boy, Kola. He deserves to know his father." His hand clenched around the frame. "You think I don't know that?" He stood, pacing toward the window. "I had a family once, Isosa. A woman I loved more than anything. They took her from me, burned her in a fire meant for me. If they knew Malik existed, they'd kill him too." Her breath hitched. "Who would do something like that?" He turned, eyes hard. "The same men I built my empire beside. The ones who couldn't stand that a man from nothing rose higher than all of them." Isosa's chest tightened. "You've been living like this all these years. Hiding him, lying to everyone?" "Protecting him," he corrected sharply. Then quieter. "Every night I see the flames. I hear her screams. And I promise myself I'll never let Malik suffer that fate." She stepped closer. "But what about you? Who protects you, Kola?" He looked at her then, really looked, and something broke inside him. The wall he'd built for years cracked under the weight of her voice. "You shouldn't care," he said hoarsely. "I'm not a good man, Isosa." "Maybe," she whispered, "but even broken men deserve to be seen." He reached for her slowly, like a man touching light for the first time. His hand brushed her cheek, rough and trembling. She didn't pull away. For a heartbeat, the storm that had raged between them fell silent. Then he stepped back, his voice barely a breath. "Go home, Isosa, before I forget who I'm supposed to be." She hesitated at the door, eyes glistening. "You already have." And when she left, Kola stood alone with the photo in his hand, realizing that the woman he'd spent years avoiding might just be the one capable of shattering his armor completely. The following week was chaos. A leaked photo of Malik had surfaced online. Blurry, but enough for people to notice the uncanny resemblance to Kola Adewale. Rumors spread like wildfire. The billionaire's secret child, hidden heir cover-up scandal. Journalists swarmed the company gates. Isosa could barely keep up with the calls, the emails, the meetings. Kola had been uncharacteristically silent through it all. Calm, cold, unreadable. But she saw the storm behind his eyes. One night, long after everyone had gone home, Isosa found him alone in the boardroom. The skyline glittered beyond the glass, but he sat in darkness. His reflection trapped between city lights and regret. "They're coming for you," she said quietly, closing the door behind her. "The press won't stop until they get proof." He didn't look up. "They'll get nothing. I've built walls stronger than their headlines." Sosa walked closer. "You've built walls around everything, even yourself." That made him look at her. His gaze was tired but intense. "You think I don't feel it? You think I don't see the boy's eyes and remember the life I destroyed?" She swallowed hard. "You didn't destroy it. You survived it." "Survival is overrated," he muttered, rising from the chair. "You just keep breathing while everything you love burns." He turned away, but Isosa's voice stopped him. "And what about what's left? Don't you dare burn that too." The air between them shifted, sharp, alive. He took a slow step toward her, then another, until she could feel the heat of his body and the scent of his cologne wrapping around her like sin. "Do you have any idea what you do to me, Isosa?" he murmured, voice low, dangerous. Her breath hitched. "Kola. I tell myself to stay away. Every time I see you, I lose that control I've lived by." His hand brushed the side of her neck, fingers trembling. "You make me want things I have no right to want." For a moment reason vanished. His lips hovered near hers, close enough to taste the tension, the danger, the forbidden sweetness of what they were both about to do. But then the intercom buzzed sharply. His assistant's voice echoed. "Sir, the press conference is ready." The spell broke. He stepped back, face hardening again. "We'll talk later," he said, though his voice was rough with what he didn't say. As he left, Isosa's knees felt weak. The man everyone feared, the one who never bent, had just confessed without words. And now, the world was closing in to tear them both apart. By the next morning the headlines were everywhere. Adewale Group scandal. The hidden son. Billionaire CEO's secret family exposed. The company's stock had crashed, investors were withdrawing, and Kola's name was on every news channel. Isosa barely made it through the swarm of reporters outside the building. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in her face. "Is it true, Miss Bamadil? Are you the boy's mother?" Her heart froze. She didn't answer, just kept walking until the security guards pulled her through the doors. Inside, the office was a war zone of panic and whispers. Kola stood in the center of it all, calm like a lion in the middle of a hunt. "I want every leak traced," he ordered. "And I want Malik moved to the safe house immediately." But his calm cracked the moment Isosa entered. His voice lowered. "You shouldn't have come today." "I'm not running from this," she replied. "I won't leave you to fight alone." He stared at her for a long moment, something raw flickering behind his eyes. Then his phone rang, and the blood drained from his face. "What is it?" Isosa asked, stepping closer. The line went dead in his hand. His voice was hoarse when he spoke. "They've taken him." The world seemed to tilt. "What do you mean, taken?" "Malik. He's gone." His composure shattered. The powerful billionaire who once commanded fear now looked like a broken man. The guards found the house empty. They left a message. "You want your legacy, come get him." Without thinking, Isosa grabbed her bag. "Then let's go." He turned sharply. "You're not coming." She met his glare head-on. "You don't get to decide that. You might have the money, Kola, but you're not the only one who loves that boy." For the first time, his anger faltered. His shoulders sagged. "Isosa." She took his hand, the same hand that had built empires and destroyed rivals, and held it tight. "You said you'd do anything to protect him. So will I." That night, they drove through the rain, hunting for the son the world had stolen. For once, there were no titles, no power, no control. Just a man stripped bare of everything except love and fear. And as the thunder rolled above them, Isosa realized something terrifying. The deeper she went into his darkness, the more she belonged there. They found Malik 2 days later, frightened but unharmed, in an abandoned villa outside Abadan. The kidnappers had fled before Kola's security team arrived, leaving behind only a message painted across the wall in red. Even kings bleed. When Kola saw his son again, he dropped to his knees and pulled the boy into his arms. "I'm so sorry, Malik," he whispered, voice shaking. "Daddy's here now. No one will ever hurt you again." Isosa stood a few feet away, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. The relief, the fear, the ache, it all hit her at once. Watching them together, she realized the empire Kola had been trying to protect had never been in the glass towers or the billions. It was right there in that small boy's arms. Back in Lagos, the scandal had destroyed everything. Kola's board resigned, contracts were pulled, and Adewale Group was on the verge of collapse. But when reporters shoved microphones in his face, Kola didn't hide. He stood before the cameras, Isosa and Malik beside him, and said the words no one expected. "Yes, Malik is my son. I hid him out of fear, and that fear has cost me everything. But I will not hide him anymore." The world went silent for a beat, then erupted. Some called him a liar, others called him brave. But Kola didn't care. For the first time he felt free. That evening, in the quiet of his now empty office, Kola watched the city lights fade into dusk. Isosa joined him, barefoot, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You lost everything today," she said softly. He looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled for the first time in months. "No, Isosa. I finally earned something worth keeping." She blushed, eyes glimmering in the dim light. "And what's that?" He reached out, tracing her fingers with his. "A woman who saw the man beneath the money." Their lips met slowly, not with urgency this time, but with relief, with truth, with love that had finally found peace. When Malik burst into the room moments later, laughing and calling, "Mama Sosa," she froze, then smiled through her tears. Kola's hand slid into hers, and for once, the silence between them felt safe. Outside, the city pulsed on, ruthless, alive, unyielding, but inside, a broken empire had given birth to something stronger, a family built not on power but on love. And as the three of them stood together by the window, the night seemed to whisper the same promise that had carried them through every storm. Some secrets destroy empires, but others, if you're brave enough to love them, can rebuild your soul.